Why would millions of people choose a restaurant precisely because they already know what will happen? Imagine arriving in an unfamiliar city after a long flight. You do not know the local restaurants. You do not know which menu to trust. You may not even speak the language well. Then you see the golden arches. Before entering, you already understand most of the experience. You know how the ordering process will work. You recognize the menu structure. You can estimate how long the meal will take. You can picture the packaging, the fries, the drink, and the general taste of the food. The restaurant may be thousands of miles from home, but the decision feels familiar. That familiarity is easy to underestimate. In marketing, brands are often told that they must constantly reinvent themselves. New products create attention. New campaigns create conversation. New experiences prevent customers from becoming bored. According to this logic, predictability is dangerous. A familiar brand risks becoming ordinary, and an ordinary brand becomes easy to ignore. McDonald's appears to challenge that assumption. Its restaurants operate across more than 100 countries. Local menus may change, and individual markets may introduce different products, flavors, and promotions. But the central experience remains remarkably recognizable. The symbols, the ordering process, the core products, the speed, and the expectations surrounding the visit are designed to feel familiar. This is not simply the result of being an old and famous company. Familiarity at this scale does not happen automatically. It has to be produced repeatedly through restaurant design, operating procedures, product standards, supplier systems, franchise relationships, employee training, packaging technology, and marketing. Every part of the system must help deliver an experience that customers can recognize before they even make a purchase. That creates an unusual business question. Why does knowing what will happen make customers more likely to return? The obvious answer is brand recognition. People see the logo, remember the company, and choose a name they know. But recognition alone does not explain the full effect. Many famous brands are widely recognized without becoming routine choices. Awareness can bring a company into the customer's mind, but it does not automatically remove uncertainty from the decision. McDonald's offers something more specific. A customer does not only recognize the brand. The customer can often predict the outcome. That prediction may involve the taste of a familiar product. It may involve the expected price range, the speed of service, the ordering process, or the confidence that the restaurant will satisfy an immediate need without requiring much research. The experience does not have to be extraordinary. It has to match the expectation closely enough that choosing it feels simple. And that is where the apparent weakness of familiarity becomes more interesting. If customers already know the menu, the process, and the likely result, why does repetition not make the brand irrelevant? Why does predictability continue to attract demand instead of pushing customers towards something more surprising? To answer that, we need to look beyond advertising and examine the system that allows McDonald's to make the same basic promise across different markets with extraordinary consistency. To deliver that level of consistency, McDonald's cannot rely on marketing alone. It has to rely on operations. Today, the company operates across more than 100 countries, but the vast majority of its restaurants are not owned by McDonald's itself. According to the company, approximately 95% of its restaurants are operated by franchisees. That means millions of customer experiences every day are delivered by thousands of independent business owners rather than by a single centralized organization. At first glance, this structure appears to create a problem. The more independent operators a company has, the harder it becomes to maintain consistent quality. Different managers make different decisions. Different employees work at different speeds. Local suppliers, customer preferences, and regulations vary from one market to another. Left unmanaged, those differences would gradually create thousands of slightly different versions of the same brand. For many businesses, that is exactly what happens. McDonald's chose a different path. Instead of treating consistency as a byproduct of growth, the company built growth around consistency. Every new restaurant becomes part of a system that is designed to reproduce the same core promise again and again. That system extends far beyond recipes. Restaurant layouts follow recognizable patterns. Kitchen processes are standardized to improve speed and repeatability. Employee training follows common operating procedures. Packaging reinforces familiar visual cues. Digital ordering systems mirror the same logic customers already understand inside the restaurant. Even when menus adapt to local tastes, the overall experience remains recognizable. This balance is important. McDonald's does not attempt to make every restaurant identical in every detail. Customers in Japan, India, France, or Brazil will find menu items that reflect local culture and dietary preferences. The company has long recognized that complete uniformity would ignore the realities of different markets. Instead, it protects something more valuable than identical products. It protects consistent expectations. Whether a customer orders a local specialty or a classic Big Mac, the broader experience still feels unmistakably like McDonald's. The visual identity, the ordering process, the service model, and the rhythm of the visit remain familiar enough that the customer rarely feels uncertain about how the experience will unfold. The company continues to modernize this system rather than replace it. In recent annual reports, McDonald's has emphasized investments in digital platforms, loyalty programs, artificial intelligence, restaurant technology, and operational improvements. These initiatives are presented as ways to improve convenience and execution while strengthening the customer experience across the system, not as attempts to redefine what the brand fundamentally represents. That distinction matters because many companies mistake change for progress. They introduce new concepts, redesign stores, overhaul products, or reinvent customer experiences in search of greater attention. Sometimes those decisions succeed. Sometimes they also force customers to learn an entirely new experience. McDonald's follows a more restrained approach. Innovation is introduced within a framework that customers already understand. New menu items appear alongside familiar ones. Mobile ordering simplifies an existing process instead of replacing it. Loyalty programs reward repeated behavior without changing the core experience that made repetition possible in the first place. Seen individually, these decisions may appear operational rather than strategic. Together, they create something much more significant. Every improvement is designed to reinforce a system that customers already trust, making each future visit feel just a little easier than the last. That gradual reinforcement changes something much more important than the restaurant itself. It changes how customers make decisions. Most purchase decisions involve uncertainty. Even something as simple as choosing where to eat requires people to make a series of quick judgments. Will the food be good? Will the service be fast? Will it be worth the price? Will the experience match what I expect? Every unanswered question adds a small amount of mental effort. Behavioral research has consistently shown that people tend to prefer information that is easier to process. Psychologists describe this phenomenon as processing fluency. When something is familiar, recognizable, and easy to understand, it often feels more trustworthy and less risky than something that requires additional evaluation. The same principle appears in the well-documented mere exposure effect, where repeated exposure can increase positive feelings toward a stimulus without requiring new persuasive arguments. McDonald's does not create these psychological tendencies. It builds a business system that works with them. Consider what happens when someone is driving on a highway, rushing between meetings, or arriving in a city they have never visited before. There may be dozens of restaurants nearby, each potentially offering better food or a more unique experience. Yet comparing every option takes time, attention, and confidence. McDonald's reduces that burden. The customer already understands the menu structure. The ordering process feels familiar. The expected waiting time is easier to estimate. The likely quality of the meal is easier to predict. Even if the outcome is not perfect, the uncertainty surrounding the decision becomes much smaller. This seemingly simple difference has important business consequences. The company no longer competes only on taste, price, or convenience. It also competes on decision friction. Every standardized procedure that appeared operational in the previous section now serves another purpose. Consistent packaging helps customers recognize the product instantly. Similar restaurant layouts reduce hesitation. Digital ordering interfaces mirror experiences customers have already learned elsewhere in the system. Loyalty programs build on existing habits instead of forcing customers to develop new ones. None of these elements appears revolutionary on its own. Together, however, they create an experience that requires remarkably little cognitive effort. That matters because many restaurant visits are not major life decisions. They are routine purchases made under time pressure, limited attention, or simple convenience. In those situations, reducing uncertainty can become just as valuable as improving the product itself. Researchers studying habit formation have found that repeated behaviors performed in stable contexts become increasingly automatic over time. Consistent cues allow people to rely less on deliberate evaluation and more on learned patterns. The context itself begins to guide future choices. McDonald's has spent decades building exactly that kind of stable context. Each visit reinforces expectations that make the next visit easier. Every experience that matches what customers anticipated strengthens confidence that future visits will produce similar results. At this point, the company's competitive position begins to look different. Its greatest strength may not lie in persuading customers that every visit will be extraordinary. It may lie in making every ordinary visit feel predictable enough that choosing another option requires more effort than simply returning. This leads to a very different way of understanding what McDonald's is actually competing with. Most discussions about competition focus on product quality, pricing, advertising, or menu innovation. Those factors certainly matter. McDonald's continues to invest in new products, digital capabilities, loyalty programs, and restaurant technology because customer expectations continue to evolve. But those investments reveal an important pattern. They are rarely designed to replace the experience customers already know. Instead, they are designed to make that familiar experience easier to access. That distinction changes the way we interpret the company's strategy. If attracting attention were the primary objective, McDonald's would face constant pressure to reinvent itself. Every campaign would need to be louder. Every menu launch would need to be more surprising. Every redesign would need to make customers feel that the brand had become something completely different. That is not what the company consistently does. Instead, McDonald's tends to introduce change around a remarkably stable foundation. Seasonal products create temporary excitement without replacing core menu items. Digital ordering removes friction without changing the basic purchasing journey. Drive-through improvements reduce waiting times without altering what customers expect to receive. Even technology investments are typically presented by the company as ways to improve execution convenience and consistency across the system rather than to redefine the brand itself. Seen from this perspective, innovation serves continuity instead of disruption. The goal is not simply to create something new. The goal is to make an already familiar experience more reliable, more convenient, and easier to repeat. That also explains why consistency becomes increasingly valuable as a franchise system grows. With approximately 95% of restaurants operated by franchisees, every location becomes another opportunity either to strengthen or weaken customer expectations. When thousands of independently operated restaurants produce experiences that remain broadly recognizable, customers begin to trust not only a specific restaurant, but the system behind it. That trust has economic consequences. A predictable experience reduces the perceived risk of choosing the brand again. Lower perceived risk reduces the amount of evaluation required before making a purchase. Easier decisions encourage repeated behavior. Repeated behavior supports stable customer traffic across the network. Stable traffic strengthens the economics of both franchisees and the broader McDonald's system. The competitive advantage therefore extends beyond advertising effectiveness. It becomes embedded in the relationship between customer expectations and operational execution. Many companies try to differentiate themselves by becoming more distinctive than their competitors. McDonald's demonstrates another possibility. In categories where purchases happen frequently, where customers often decide quickly, and where the consequences of a disappointing experience are relatively immediate, removing uncertainty can become just as valuable as creating novelty. Predictability, in this context, is not the absence of differentiation. Predictability becomes the differentiation. Not because customers dislike new experiences, but because they do not always want every routine decision to feel like an experiment. Sometimes the strongest reason to return is the confidence that tomorrow's experience will closely resemble yesterday's. That is why consistency should not be mistaken for a lack of strategy. When it is deliberately designed, reinforced through operations, and maintained across thousands of locations over decades, consistency becomes an asset that competitors cannot easily imitate simply by copying a menu or matching a price. It reflects an entire business system working to make every future choice feel a little more certain than the last. Seen as a whole, McDonald's begins to look less like a company that simply sells fast food and more like a company that manages expectations with extraordinary precision. The hamburgers, fries, restaurants, and advertisements are all visible parts of the business. The invisible asset is confidence. Every time a customer walks into a McDonald's and receives an experience that closely matches what they expected, that confidence becomes a little stronger. The next decision requires a little less thought. The perceived risk becomes a little lower. Returning feels a little easier. When this process repeats millions of times, across tens of thousands of restaurants, consistency stops being an operational objective. It becomes an economic advantage. That advantage reaches far beyond individual customer satisfaction. For franchisees, predictable customer behavior supports more stable sales. For suppliers, standardized products simplify production and logistics. For the company itself, a reliable customer experience strengthens the value of the entire network because every restaurant reinforces the reputation of every other restaurant. This is one reason why maintaining consistency becomes increasingly valuable as the system grows. The larger the network becomes, the more expensive inconsistency becomes. A single disappointing experience may affect one customer. A system that repeatedly delivers what customers expect shapes millions of future purchasing decisions. That also explains why McDonald's continues to invest heavily in technology, digital ordering, loyalty platforms, restaurant modernization, and operational improvements. These initiatives are not simply attempts to appear more innovative. They help preserve the reliability of the customer experience while adapting to changing consumer behavior. In other words, the company is not choosing between consistency and innovation. It is using innovation to protect consistency. That is a very different strategic objective. Many businesses assume competitive advantage comes primarily from offering something customers have never seen before. There are certainly industries where that is true, but everyday consumer decisions follow different economics. When people are busy, tired, traveling, feeding a family, or making routine purchases, reducing uncertainty can become just as valuable as increasing excitement. Under those conditions, familiarity is no longer a weakness that limits growth. It becomes an asset that reduces decision costs, encourages repeated behavior, and strengthens the entire business system. That perspective also changes how we think about brand value. A strong brand is not only one that people remember. A strong brand is one that allows customers to make decisions with confidence because they already understand the outcome before the transaction even begins. McDonald's demonstrates that this confidence can be designed, reinforced, and scaled over decades through disciplined execution rather than constant reinvention. The company still evolves. Menus change. Technology improves. Customer expectations continue to shift. Yet the central promise remains remarkably stable. Customers return not because every visit offers a surprise, but because the experience reliably delivers what they expected it to deliver. Perhaps that is why familiarity has become one of McDonald's most valuable competitive assets. Not because people resist change, but because, in many everyday decisions, certainty itself creates value. And when a company can transform that certainty into a repeatable experience across the world, consistency stops being a marketing characteristic. It becomes part of the business model itself.